Hey, what's up, dudes and dudettes? Brad the Guitarologist here. So this has become a bit of a problem child of an amplifier here. This is, I don't know, maybe late 70s. Master Model 100 lead head. It's got issues. I'm not sure what's going on with it. I've worked on this thing a couple times now. I've made videos about it in the past. It's been back once that I did not make a video of just because it didn't seem like that it would have been a very eventful video before. But now, in hindsight, looks like maybe it was a little more eventful than I had thought. Because we're back to blowing fuses. And this thing just will not hold a fuse and will not stop screwing up for this guy. The fuse that blew is the 4 amp mains fuse. Like I said, I've changed tubes on this. This is the one with the 6550s. Just looking at these tubes also, they look like they've got some milkiness up here, like they've been just really hot. All of the power caps have been changed in it. I went through and did several things to it when I first got it in. There was at one time a problem with the power switch. I had to take the power switch out of it and clean it because it was having issues. Wasn't working consistently, if I recall correctly. Yeah, man, just several little things that this thing had, and all of it seemed to be kind of in the power supply. We'll have to figure out what's going on with this. I'm pulling tubes right now because I want to try to test these, and I also want to look at the sockets to make sure we don't have any burned sockets. I mean, the sockets do not look great on this, and this is one of those where I had considered at one point where maybe there was some kind of issue with the sockets because they were just, I don't know, they just didn't look real great. They've definitely been hot in their life. That doesn't mean that they're bad. This is going to be a hard one to track down, I can already tell you, because it's already been here a couple times. Look at here. See this tube? The last one I just pulled. See the difference in the labels? Where this one's a white label and this one's just really dark and almost blackened, brown. I mean, that's been hot. That's been hot. I don't know. And see this milky crap on the outside that's on the outside of the tube, so that's not. It's nothing to concern ourselves about, but that's, what is up with that? Why is that so damn milky? What is that? All right, well, anyway, we know that we're blowing mains fuse. With no power tubes on it, we'll see if we can bring it up slowly, and if a fuse will hold. We'll have to see what kind of current draw we've got going on. Okay, so that tube right there, that was one that had been cremated previously, and I thought I had tracked down the problem then, but apparently I did not. I don't know what's going on with this thing, dude. I've already fixed it the first time. I went through and basically, did a complete service on the thing, and now it's got some kind of issue that is just not able to be tracked down, at least not so far by me. This is one of those too where you really wish something would just burn. If it's gonna burn, just burn and get it over with so I can tell what the problem is. Okay, we're gonna put some power on this and take some measurements. If the voltages are steady and solid, rock solid, with no tubes, output tubes in it, that kind of points to it was a tube issue. Not necessarily, because sometimes when a tube conducts, it puts stress or strain on surrounding components, and then that component might start to fail, for instance. But at least it gives us some perspective. So I'm gonna turn it on. We'll dial it up slowly here. I've got a new fuse in it, obviously. All right, we're 40 volts on the input. We've got 80 volts right there at that point, but that's only halfway into so that should be about double. Is that right? Yeah, about 160 volts going on there. 159 volts right there. And that's the problem socket. That's where our problem tube was. Let's go ahead and dial it up a bit. I'm going to go ahead and remove my rings before somebody starts yelling at me. You got rings on? Yeah, but I'm not sticking the ring in the thing. Yeah, but it can arc. Yeah, but my hand is way the hell up here. Anyway, let's not argue. Let's not argue. Let's be fun. Let's be fun. Let's be fun. But no, it's correct. It's probably a bad idea to wear rings. So that voltage is pretty rock steady. Same story there. Same story there. I think we just have a case of sudden infant tube death here. 355 on the screen. I mean, it's got to be manufacturing on those tubes, because that's the only constant that I can see. No other explanation really seems to make much sense. There's 257. I'm gonna go ahead and dial it on up. Let's go up to about 100 volts on the input. First node. 412 volts right there. 412 volts right there. Of course, that's the only thing separating those two nodes is a choke. So they're not going to be far apart in terms of voltage. And this one should be hopefully still rock steady, and it is. Okay, our plate on our problem socket. If we were having an issue with the socket, carbon tracking over to the filament or something like that, it would be doing that now even without a tube in it. Let's check our bias. Negative 41 volts right there. Now, the one thing I will say on this, I was talking to my friend Steve about this because, this is one of those, like I said, it's been to me 3 times now. It's been back twice. And anytime that sort of thing happens, and then you have had intermittent issues, and then you've had weird issues like this, you always want to, you're really loath to hand it back again without trying to be sure you've done everything that you can to, make sure that the same thing isn't going to happen yet again. Because every time it happens, whether it's your fault or not, as a tech, you end up looking like a dumbass, and you end up looking like the guy who failed. So, I called my friend Steve, and I was asking just for a second opinion. It's like, hey, what do you think, man? Does this sound like a tube issue to you, or is there anything else you can think of that I might take a look at? And he said, well, if it's 6550s, he was talking about these resistors over here. Those resistors are part of the load for the input, and your bias voltage passes through those, and they're 150K. Well, you can see here. So the grids get their bias voltages through these two 150K resistors. One goes to one pair, and then this resistor splits off and goes to the other pair. And again, they're 150K on that schematic. Now, I don't know what version of the amp that schematic is supposed to be, because it really doesn't give a whole lot of information, but there are those two resistors right there. You can see that brown, green, yellow, those two resistors together, and you can see that they're different. They're a different style of resistor than pretty much everything else in the amp. So that leads me to believe maybe somebody had changed those at some point from what was stock. And what was stock, if we were to look underneath, you'll see it kind of poking out there. You'll see it written. It's 82K. And he asked me, he was like, well, look at those resistors and see if they're 82Ks, because the 6550 wants to see 82K right there. Well, they're not 82K, they're 150. So I don't know, maybe I'll change those. But at the same time, I have already rebiased the amp, and the only thing those should really affect would be the bias. So yeah, I don't know. I don't see the benefit necessarily in changing those, but I will keep that under my hat. It's possible we might come back and change those, but right now, man, it's looking rock solid. I don't see any issues at all with what's going on here. Nothing whatsoever would alarm me about what's going on here without tubes in this amp. So we're still sitting right at 412 nothing has changed, and that's our problem socket. And I'm gonna just kind of move the socket around a little bit. Maybe try to make something fail or short, you know, just, I don't know, maybe it's happening under vibration, you know, while he's playing the amp. Maybe the socket's moving around, and that, I mean, things like that do happen under physical vibration. You'll have problems rear their heads that don't normally, but that doesn't seem to be the case right there. So okay, so here we are testing these tubes on my tube tester, and you can see right here already we've got a short on this tube, and it started out kind of slow. I'll show you what I mean. And the thing is, whoops, that was line off, wrong button. Let's try it this way. See, so it shows good on the deflection of the meter, but there's a short, and if I throw pin 5, short seems to be on pin 5, so we've definitely got a problem. Well, now it's not even deflecting, so but see, now it's not. Oh, it's because of that. That would make sense. But see, it comes and goes as well, so there's some kind of intermittent. See, there's an intermittent problem with this tube, and that could have very well been caused by something in the amp. But see, but it could have also just been the tube, and that's the problem with issues like this. You just never know what is the root cause. Are you looking at the root cause, or are you looking at a symptom? You know what I mean? Yeah, so these amps, if you don't know, these amps have two different fuses. They have a mains fuse, which is 4 amps, and then they have a high tension fuse. The high tension is your high voltage portion of the amp. So if, for instance, if there was a short on one of these power caps or something like that to ground, just a dead short, and it was drawing a bunch of current, that current would overload the high tension fuse and pop it before, you know, hopefully before popping anything else, because it's just a 1 amp fuse. Let's say it was shorting between the heater of this tube, the heater line, and the control grid over here on one of these tubes. So that would draw current through the heater, right? Because the control grid is usually negative, so that would try to find ground through the control grid, so this would overload, right? The heater line would overload. And so when that happens, that's going to draw more current from the source, and it's going to pop that 4 amp fuse. So that would explain that. So here's the working theory right now, and I've already scraped on this tube socket. I think it's possible that this tube is just infant death. It's infant death of a tube. Now, this is the second time I've had this amp back, so I'm already kind of looking like a dumbass on this thing as it is. And you know, it's been here for a minute as well, and it's just, the longer it sits, the worse I look. This is the tube that was already replaced. So I ordered a complete quad of these. I changed the quad, then this blew, and it looks like well, it doesn't look like, it definitely happened. The filament cremated itself. I don't know if it went to air and then the filament cremated itself as a result of that, or what, but I mean, it looks to me like classic went to air and the filament cremated itself. That's what it looks like happened. And indeed, there is no continuity on the filament on this. This is dead. It's an open filament. So that happened, and I don't know which socket this was in. I would like to say it was probably in this socket, because probably what I did was I popped this tube out when I got this thing back the first time, and then put this tube in there, right? But this one has a completely different pathology and failure point. It's not a you know, a problem of a open filament or cremated filament or you know, tube that went to air, most likely, I'm guessing. But this is a problem of shorted internal, probably I would say grid to heater is my guess, because we've got, I don't know exactly how that would happen, but it would have to happen somewhere inside. I think when the grid kind of heats up, when the tube heats up, sometimes the grids can heat up and sag a little bit. Basically gravity gets a hold of them and they kind of can start touching other things, and elements expand and all that stuff. And it could be a case though of a socket issue, and I'll show you. I mean, these sockets have definitely been through a lot over the years, but I've already kind of scraped in between these pins. Pin 2 and 7 are the heaters, so here and here. But what you don't want is for pin 2 to short over to pin 3. So I've kind of scraped in between those, and I went ahead and did that for all of these tubes over here. This one had already been done originally by someone else, and I kind of noticed it early on that it looked like someone had scraped some carbon tracking or something. And maybe it has nothing to do with any of this. Maybe this is not the source of any issue at all, and it's just like I said, it's just a problem of a recurring infant death syndrome with these Sovtek tubes. And I think it's very possible that's what's going on. We just got a bad batch. It's a bloody shame when the first one goes, but then when you get a second one and it goes in a completely different manner, it would be one thing if they went in the same way, and then I could say, oops, well, maybe it was the amp after all. But that's not what's happening here. I've been sent 2 shit tubes in a row. That's the problem. And I'm not happy. If I have to eat that tube cost, that's going to really piss me off. If they don't comp me that tube, even though it's been a little while. He played 1 gig with this amp and it failed immediately. And the amp's been sitting here for a bit. And that part's my fault, but if they don't comp me a tube, I'm going to find another wholesaler. I think that's the only response to that, because, I don't abuse that. I don't call them often on things, and I have the proof right here. I've shown you the test for that one, and that one obviously has been cremated, and that's a bad filament. And it was nothing that this dude did, and it's nothing in the amplifier. I can find no pathology that would suggest that something in this amp is causing tubes to fail, especially when tubes fail in 2 completely different ways. You would expect, if there was a pathology in the amp that was causing an issue with tubes, that they would fail in the exact same way. But they're not. Okay, so there's plate voltage right there with 120, and it's just pretty rock steady, not going anywhere. I don't see where it's a fault of the amp. So this is one of those cases where, man, you have an intermittent issue, and the last time this thing was back, it started doing something funky and then stopped. And I got video of that, and I'm getting this weird. I think I've got a bad pot, but I'm just curious what you think on this one, man. Look at this. Look at that. Now, if I turn this volume up, that's coming off this volume pot. Well, it's coming off this tube over here, but that's the same as this stage, the volume pot. But if I turn it up, that smear goes away on the bottom edge. But look, when I turn the volume pot down, you see that smear down there? On the waveform, it smears out until it goes all the way down. Just a weird waveform. Have you ever seen anything like that? But it only did it for a second. And then I was kind of poking around, and I think I moved a wire over here. And I wasn't certain that moving that wire is what fixed it, but I kind of just chalked it up to that because I had no other explanation that I could really go off of except, hey, I just moved that wire and it seemed to stop. So maybe it had something to do with something being induced into that wire and a lead dress issue. It didn't fully satisfy what I was thinking it might be, but I didn't know any other explanation at the time. But now I think I might have another explanation. I think it might have been this tube was already beginning to fail. The grid was already starting to sag and short into something else, some other internal component on the tube. and it was causing intermittent issues already. But yeah, okay, so I've got to contact my wholesaler on the tubes, and we will see what they do about it. And if they won't take care of me on it, then I'm just going to probably start ordering my tubes somewhere else. If they can't get their money back for these failures, then that's on them. That's not my problem. You know, and that's the way I look at it. I was in retail once, and that's the way it works then too. You know, somebody sends you a faulty guitar or faulty amp or faulty whatever or set of tubes, and they don't work, or they have a problem and one of them dies within a week, you know, or on the first gig that the guy plays, you know, you expect to be able to get your money back on something like that.
Thank you for calling CE Distribution. Please visit cedist.com for all our product information.
This is James. How may I help you?
Yeah, hello, James. My name is Brad, and I'm with Apex Guitars / The Guitologist, and I ordered a quad of some Sovtek 6550s a while back. It's been quite a while, actually. There was a problem because everything's going on within the last 18 months or so. This guy was not able to really play it at a gig, and when he finally did, one of those tubes blew, and you guys comped me a new one. And I think that was, I don't know, maybe the middle of last year or something like that when you comped me the new tube. The problem is he took it out on a second gig, and it's blown a second tube prematurely in a different way, so it's not the same failure. And there's no problem with the amp that I could tell, man. This is not an amplifier issue. This is an issue with these Sovtek 6550s. I don't know if you guys have got a bad batch of these things or what, but the one that the failure I'm having now is a grid short that's intermittent, and it's causing this tube to red plate, but it only happens when it warms up. So I mean, you know, we've got another problem with another tube is what I'm. Long story short.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'll be glad to try to help you out. I do want to let you know we actually do have a 90-day warranty. I can try to see what I can do, so I can pull it up and take a look at mine. Do you have an order number or some sort of reference number so I can take a look?
Yeah, the original order number was 562731. And you're going to see that's well outside the 90 days. That order was placed in December of 2019. But again, the problem was clearly with everything going on. This guy, he played one gig with this dude. The initial tube blew on the first gig, and that was sometime in the middle of when everything opened back up in 2020. And then he brought it back to me. I had a bunch of stuff in line. Took a while to turn it around. When I finally got back to you guys, you did comp me a tube, to your credit. And now the same thing has occurred. This guy finally got his amp back out on a gig, blew another tube, brought it back. It sat here a while waited for to get other things out, and we're back in the same situation. Another blown tube.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, I take a look into this and try to help out the best I can. So, okay, if I put you on a brief hold?
Sure. Thanks a lot.
All right. So I did take a look into it. Unfortunately, due to it being super far out of our warranty, I would have had to ask my manager to get permission, and it is really far out of our warranty. We're not going to be able to accept it back. I do apologize about that, but the original order is from 2019.
Yeah, but considering everything that's happened in the interim, I would assume that you guys would make an exception in this case. So what you're doing basically is you're sticking me with the responsibility of buying this guy a tube. I'm going to have to comp him the fucking tube now. You guys can see, how long have I been a customer of yours?
From what I can see in the account since 2014.
Okay, that's correct. And I've bought. You can probably accumulate everything that I've bought from you. That's about to change. Also, if you'll notice who I am, I usually don't do this or try to name drop or any of this crap. But I do have a YouTube with 125,000 subscribers. Most of the people online who do this sort of thing watch my channel, and I'll be reporting on this. You guys are selling Sovteks that are crap, and I know for a fact you could take this tube back and you could get comped from the company, but you're not going to do that. You're going to stick me with having to comp my customer. So that to me kind of boils my blood, to be honest with you. I'll tell you what, charge my account, send me another tube, and it'll be the last order I ever make through you guys.
All right. Give me 1 second. Is that just what you for one Sovtek? That would be only one match squad, correct?
Excuse me?
You only want the new order for one of the Sovtek 6550s and not a quad.
Well, yeah, obviously, because it was a brand new quad. You know, it was a brand new quad of tubes. He's had it on 2 gigs. The first gig blew the first tube, and then, you know, again, I explained to you the reason for the lag, and it seems pretty legit that it took him forever to even get a gig in 2020 for obvious reasons. And then second gig he goes on, he blows a second tube, which is the replacement tube that you sent. The other 3 don't have infant death, but then you sent me 2 tubes that had infant death in the tubes, and now you're not going to comp them. And on top of that, your prices have gone up from $132 for a quad of these fucking things up to like $180 north of that for a quad. So yeah, I'm not going to be buying another quad, and I certainly wouldn't buy it from you guys at this point. That's unbelievable, dude. Can I speak to your manager?
Let me go see if he is available, and I can transfer you over to him.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
All right, so he is available. Let me get you over to him. I'm also going to provide him the order number and the information that I've been given.
Thanks, man.
While I do that,
what
me place on a brief hold.
What's his name?
His name is Darren.
Darren, I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Let me get you over there.
Hey, this is Garen. James was telling me that you had a question about an old tube.
Yeah, what's your name?
Garen.
Garen. Yeah, Garen. Well, the premise that you just proposed there, that it's an old tube, is incorrect. It's not really old. It's old in age, but it's not old in hours. I've got 2 tubes actually here that have died in their infancy. You guys sent me a quad of these in 2019. I'm sure you can see December 15th, 2019 was the original order date. The problem is, as you well know, in the interim, we've had a global pandemic where people weren't able to play anything resembling a Marshall on any stage anywhere until fairly recently. So for most of last year, this guy sat on this amp. At one point, he did finally get up on a stage that would accept him up there with a Marshall. He got on it and promptly blew a tube out of this quad. You guys, to your credit, comped me a tube, even though it was out of the 90 days at that time. Okay, he brings it to me. It sets in my queue for a little while before I'm able to even figure out what the problem was, and it was a bad tube, and then get you guys to comp him that tube. Well, the same thing happened again with a second Sovtek, and this one failed in a different way. The first one had a cremated filament, and it had gone to air. It's got the white cap on it. This one has an inner electrode short from the grid, and that's only intermittent, so it only happens whenever the tube is warm. But this is an obvious case of an infant death of the tube. It's not my damn fault you guys sent me 2 tubes that were bad, and it's not my damn fault there's a pandemic going on where the guy is only able to play a couple of gigs here and there, and the first time he does play a gig, he discovers a bad, faulty tube. It's not like this guy, you know, has jammed on these things for a year straight. I would totally understand, but these are a little bit different circumstances, wouldn't you say?
I don't disagree that the circumstances are a little different in that sense, but we do still have a 90-day warranty that is posted on our website.
Yep, and like I said, I have one response to that. There's only one response that I could possibly do to that. I won't be ordering anything else from you because you're sticking me in the situation as the tech. I'm in the middle of this where I own this. You know how this is. You know how this goes. Now I own this problem, and I'm going to comp this guy the tube. It's going to come out of my pocket, and I'm basically paying for a mistake that was done at the factory. So the factory gets their money from you. You got your money from me now. And where's my compensation coming from? I could send you guys these tubes back if you want to put them under your testers. You could figure out what the hell happened to them. You could see that, they haven't been abused. It's a case of infant death.
Right.
I mean,
but with warranties, like you mentioned, we have our warranties from our manufacturer and where we get it from, so we have to implement our own warranties based on their warranties. So it's just kind of, like you said, it's kind of the ladder there.
But I know that's not a hard and fast rule when it comes to somebody at a manufacturing facility. How many of these tubes do you guys sell for these people at Sovtek? Probably quite a few, I would imagine. And they're not going to comp you a tube when you get a bad tube, especially at these new.
I personally don't know that would be all on for purchasing. I'm not all that sure how often they take back tubes and what their rulings are on that.
Yeah, but I can assure you, it's Darren, right? Is it Darren or Garen? I'm sorry.
Garen with a G.
Garen with a G. Well, Garen with a G, I can promise you this. This is probably going to cost you more to not comp me this tube than it is to comp me the tube. Because, like I said to the other fellow, I'm not just a nobody. I've got a YouTube channel with 125,000 subscribers. All of this is being recorded anyway. I wanted to figure out what you guys would do in this situation, and to my utter dismay, you have disappointed me. I figured it would be a case of, you know what? Yeah, well, it's been a global pandemic for a year. I'm not going to stick you, the tech, with having to buy this guy a new tube. And that's exactly what you've just done. So that's really unfortunate. So send me the tube, charge my account, and it will be the last order I ever place with you. And on top of that, I will tell everyone else in my sub base not to buy anything from you either. So go ahead and just put it on my account, charge me, and send me the damn thing then.
I do want to mention this order is almost 2 years old, and we have a warranty. That's the reason we can't. I mean, if the pandemic, the pandemic hadn't even hit yet when the 90 days hit. And we're even a year and a half past that. So it's just my hands are tied here too with our policies. We have to stick to our policies.
I got you, but I know that if you order a lot of stuff through Sovtek, you could call your rep at Sovtek, and you could solve this problem in 2 seconds. Shit flows uphill, but the problem with being a tech is shit stops with me. That's the problem, and you've made it where the shit stops at me. So I guess send me the tube. I'm gonna pay for it, and I'll comp it to this guy.
Right.
And again,
if you want, I can.
Just don't.
I can't say. I mean, if you want, there's one person in the building who is above me. If you want to try and talk to him,
why don't you do this? Why don't you go tell him, hey, I've got this guy on the phone who has a YouTube channel with 125,000 subscribers. We've got a bit of a problem. It's been a pandemic. This guy's played this amp twice. It's blown 2 tubes, both of them infant mortality. How about we comp this guy a tube? How about you talk to him and save my breath?
I can do that. Yeah, I can almost guarantee he's probably going to say the same thing.
If he says the same thing, it's not going to help you guys. I can promise you that.
And so you do want, if you want me to go ahead and send a 6550, we'll get it closely matched to what you have, if that is what you're looking for.
This one had a current of 41, transconductance of 5740. That was the original tube that blew. I've got it in my hands with a big white cap. Here, the second one with the inter-electrode short is a transconductance of 5830. I don't know how you guys match these. Are you going by the SP number, SP12 or AP12 or whatever?
That's a good question. I apologize. I don't really know the Apex systems. I just know the plate current is kind of our main focus.
Okay, plate current of 41 then.
Can usually be off. Okay.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. So, I'll go relay all this, and I'll see if we can grab tubes. I don't know if we still have, because our Apex changes, every so often. So I don't know if we still have 41 plate current tubes or what that reads to, but I can look that up and get it all figured out. And I'll go relay that to my supervisor and see if there's any wiggle room or anything like that. And I can either shoot you an email if there's an update, or we can just kind of get this sent out at cost or at no cost. Kind of depending on what.
Garen, listen, just between me and you, personally. I apologize for being caustic, but I'm sure you can understand. The problem is the shit has stopped at my desk now. And
Right.
you know, the problem is here, I'm more of a YouTuber than I am a day-to-day repair guy. So it takes me a while to turn things around too. So there's a little bit of a problem with that. And I understand that's not your problem. At the same time, when you have two tubes with infant death like this, he's played the damn things one time and they blow up on stage. It makes me look like an idiot. And it makes Sovtek look bad. And now that you guys won't comp me a tube, even, you know, I know it's been a long time. But at the same time, given what all's happened, it's a little bit different. You know,
Right.
and I have a video showing what the state of the amplifier that these tubes went into. I'm making a video right now on this current state of the amplifier that these tubes were in. And with no tubes in this amp, it does nothing out of the ordinary. It's not a problem with the amp. There's no carbon tracking. There's
Right.
you know, I've looked at this thing every which way but loose, and it's not a problem with the amp, dude. It's a problem with these damn tubes and the infant mortality of these 6550s. And I'm the one who turned this guy onto the Sovtex. I said, if you're going to get 6550s, probably go with the Sovtex, because in my experience, they usually hold up pretty well. Russian tubes are pretty robust, and it makes me look like the asshole for telling him that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I I understand your frustration, and that's kind of where I come from. I have the policy that I have to follow. Usually, you know, I can, as being up here, I can kind of bend it a little bit if we're a little bit past 90, but when it's this
Yeah, and I think there's probably
break
somebody at Sovtek who can bend a little bit too. When you guys explain, hey,
Right.
we've had to comp a couple tubes. What's going on over there? Are you guys not? And shit usually rolls uphill in these situations, and it should. That's how they get problems sorted. You should call them and tell your rep at Sovtek, hey, I've had this guy. You know, who, for lack of a better word, is an influencer on freaking YouTube, for God's sake, and he's shown two of your tubes have blown up in infancy. You guys should probably fix this. You know, do you want the tubes back so you can look and see what happened? Do you have QC issues? You know, let's fix the problem.
Right.
So this doesn't happen to a
Right.
bunch of other people and they get crappy tubes that they're now spending a hell of a lot more on. I noticed the price jumped since I bought these. The price went from 132 up to like 160 or 170 almost. So I mean, a huge price jump on top of it. It's like, you know, pretty soon people are not going to want to buy tube guitar amps if this stuff continues, man. You know, let's fix this crap. Anyway.
Yeah, and like I said, like you said, it goes uphill. So I'm gonna go uphill and see if anything will do, and I'll contact you.
Well,
if,
send me. I'll tell you what. Just do what you need to do. Talk to the guy. Just send me the tube. I can't stay on the phone all day, and I won't make you do that either. If you're gonna comp it, and send it to me. If not, then just send it to me and charge my account, and we'll just because I have to pay for it either way. So anyway.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I will go ahead and get that rolling. I'll go talk to him and see what we can do. And apologize for this, but yeah, like
dude, I do too. I do
that.
too. I'm stuck in the middle just like you are, dude. You know, I wish they hadn't failed. So, all right, brother.
Well, all right. I'll get this all taken care of for you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right, we'll see you, man. That was not what I wanted to happen. That wasn't what I wanted to happen at all. I was hoping that they would say, yeah, you know what? And I figured they would try to cite policy, because you would, wouldn't you? But at the same time, man, if you've got tubes that you're buying as a wholesaler, you're buying these directly from Sovtek, you have a rep at Sovtek, you can call that rep at Sovtek and say, hey, man, we've got a couple 6550s that have gone bad. What's going on with this? You know what I'm saying? And wouldn't you be curious? I mean, I would think the rep at Sovtek would be curious and say, hey, send me those tubes. I'd like to dissect them or see what batch they came from or something, or, you know what I mean? To try to figure out, get to the bottom of what's going on. Did we have a bad batch of these? How can we fix it? Are we slipping on QC? You know? But like I said, the wholesale price of a quad of these tubes at my source has gone from $132.80 in December of 2019 up to $167.60, you know, within the span of what, 20 months, I mean, dude, that's an enormous jump. And I know we've got issues with. Oh man, we've got issues all around. The whole fucking world's got issues, don't we? Don't we? And it's absolutely true that at some stage, people are not going to want to buy tube amplifiers if this keeps happening. Why would they? Why would you? Why would you keep spending more and more money on a product that doesn't work? It makes no economic sense, and that means the end of my profession, pretty much. You know, I'm not going to be. How many amplifiers am I going to be fixing if people no longer will even use them because they keep having tube failures because the quality has cheaped out while the price keeps going up? Anyway, end of rant. End of rant. Okay, so we've gotten the new tube in, and I got an email that they did indeed charge me for this thing, so this will be the last tube I ever order from this place. And I just want to head off a little bit of criticism. I know that generally speaking, it's not cool to say, do you know who I am? You know, that kind of shit. I get it. But at the same time, my customer was screwed out of a tube. He paid $130 or whatever it was for a quad of tubes. It's a little bit different if you're a retailer, but as a wholesaler, you expect that people you sell to are going to be stocking stuff. So to put a 90-day limit on something like this, I've never abused the return policy at this place. So these are the only returns that I've ever had from this place. So for those of you who say, you're just being a bully and you're just trying to sick your audience or use that as leverage, yes, I am trying to use it as leverage because it exists. If they're really curious about why these failed, they should ask for them back. I will gladly send them back to them, and then they can get on the phone with Sovtek and say, hey, you guys have had a couple of bad tubes here. You know, what's going on? Are we getting a rash of these 6550s that are bad? That's the rational thing to do in this situation, not stick me, the middle guy, with having to buy my customer a tube, which is exactly what I'm doing. I'm not going to ask him to pay for it because he paid for tubes. He paid for good tubes and he didn't get them. You know, it's on me to see that he gets a full set of good tubes. So that's what we're going to do here. 3 months. What if I were to order the 6550s and let's say I ordered, 3 or 4 quads of 6550s just to have in stock because, I get a lot of traffic into my shop or something like that. Just theoretically, what if that happened? I ordered these. They sat on my shelf for more than 90 days, and then I stuck them in someone's amp and then called back and said, hey, we got a bad tube. One of them blows immediately. And I say, hey, we got a bad tube. What are they going to say? No, you can't have another tube. We're going to charge you for that. Why? Because it just happened to sit on my shelf for 90 days? I mean, that's bullshit. I don't care how you look at it. It's bullshit. Can't tell you how many, probably thousands of dollars I've spent with them. It's probably not an overwhelming amount, but it's still probably in the thousands. It's definitely in the thousands. And they've just lost a customer. Why would you do that? Over what? Over a tube that you could easily call up the company and get replaced? I don't get it. It makes no sense. It's a really dumb policy to have if you're a wholesaler. Okay, we've got it set to 16 ohms there, 16 there on the dummy load. Let's dial this up slowly. We'll get some voltage measurements. Okay, I've got it dialed up about halfway. I have 265 volts on that plate. Okay, there's the screen. Negative 26.5 on the grid. And we'll dial it on up a little bit more. Actually, let's go up to about 85 volts. Let's just hang out right there for a second. Negative 35.7 volts DC. That looks pretty good so far. We're not even all the way up. We've got good negative voltage. Let's see what our plate looks like. Plate is healthy at 337. I'll check one of these other pairs over here on the plate. See where it's at. 337 on that one. So get some signal running through it. Our bias is still holding, hasn't really gone anywhere at all, and I'm going to keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't run away or do anything crazy. You may see it change just slightly as I put some signal through it. So we're at 90 volts input, 85 watts of power overall, 1.1 amps overall, which is not excessive. This thing has a 4 amp fuse on the mains. Still holding steady at 35.7 volts on the bias negative. So let's go ahead and dial it up to 100 volts on the input. And we're now consuming 110 watts overall of power at 1.3 amps. You can see our really nice, strong, healthy. This looks good. Looks good. Dial it down a little bit. Okay, we've crept up to 120 watts overall. I say crept up because that's what it's doing. It's just creeping up slowly. Now that's not anything to necessarily be alarmed at, but we will keep an eye on that because sometimes creeping up like that can swiftly start to run away. And these are the figures you want to keep an eye on. We're at 125 watts. Now watch when I turn down you can see over here, I'm turning down the amp. And you can see it's down to 115 watts, but obviously the wattage is going to go up if you're driving the amp. We'll go to 120. And I think what I want to do before doing anything else is go ahead and just measure where we are now. So I'll turn everything down there. It is not running away. It's not doing anything unusual. 439 volts on the plate is not unusual. Let's see. Check out our screen. We're getting screen voltage, 431 on the screen, and there's our 47 negative volts on the grid. So okay, 439 plate volts, 0.057 volts voltage drop across that resistor, and that also should be about what our current draw is, 0.0576. Yeah, I'm measuring across the 1 ohm resistor between the cathode and ground that I installed previously. And this is our figure here. So this will directly correspond to our overall tube current. That's plate and screen, mind you, added together. 0.0577 times, and we're going to do our plate voltage again because I forgot what it was. 438 times 438 equals 25.27 watts. Okay, that's at idle, and that's per tube for a 6550. Okay, if we looked at the 6550 right here, the maximum plate dissipation for 6550 is 35 watts. So 25 watts, that should be fine. But let's go ahead and just make sure. So if we take the maximum 35 watts and we multiply that times 0.7, which is about what we would want, 24.5. So maybe slightly on the high side, but not really, because we're also including screen current in with our plate current measurement. So actually it should be lower per tube. But still, I'm wondering whether or not this is one of those cases where I should just back this off and just let it run cool, just to make sure we don't have another premature failure. I'll increase this negative voltage figure just a hair. I'm just going to do it a smidgen because I don't want to compromise the amp too much, but I have to compromise some because it's not. So we're going to make this more negative. Let's go to about 48.5 negative. Let me check this again. So 0.0526. Okay, 0.0526 times, we need the plate voltage again because that would have changed. Plate voltage is 441 times 441 volts. Now we're down to 23 watts per tube. Can you see that? 120 volts on the input, 1.6 amps. We're dissipating 162 watts of power overall. That's for the entire amp. You know, and that's in heat and everything. So that's not what the amp is going to be putting out through the output. So don't confuse that. That's just that plus the heat and, you know, everything that's being consumed by the amp. But if it does fail again, I will get my money back out of that tube and tell them where to shove it because I'm not going to buy anything else from them. I'm just not. It's a principle of the matter. If you don't stand up for yourself in a situation like that, you know, you're gonna be the one run over your entire life if you don't stand up for yourself in situations where, you know, through no fault of your own, a business deal has gone awry. You have to be able to stand up for yourself, and, you know, in this case, I've got a customer, so I have to stand up for my customer too. And if you don't do that, you're just going to be screwed your entire life. It's just a principle of the thing, man. You don't want hard feelings with people that you work with, but at the same time, you got to stand your ground sometimes. You know, I've never mistreated this company or abused their return policy or done anything of the sort. I'm just trying to make my customer whole, and I don't want to be out anything trying to make my customer whole, you know. And right now, I'm the one who's gotten the short end of the stick in this. But we're going to let this burn in for a bit. So we've got it on the bench. We're going to just monitor what's going on. So we've got 441 volts there. I definitely want to keep monitoring the grid voltage, the bias, so negative 48.6. So we're going to leave it on the bench for a little while and monitor what's going on. And obviously before, you know, and I've done this every time I've had it anyway, and it's a standard thing that I do. I'll throw it on my cabinet and give it a little bit of a jam through, and, you know, try to make it fail. But I think in this case, what I might do is put it on the cabinet and continue to monitor the voltages while I'm jamming through the cabinet. Because who knows? Maybe because he had it out on a gig, but you know, this thing was rattling around or something and causing a failure. You know, that. It's possible. I will say with this thing cranked, it gets up almost to that 4 amps. I mean, that fuse is a slow blow fuse, and it's not exceeded the 4 amps from what I can see at any point. But, you know, it is getting up there near that 4 amps when you crank it. So I don't know, maybe he just had it cranked too damn loud. I mean, but at the same time, it shouldn't have mattered because it shouldn't exceed the plate dissipation for that tube. Let's crank it to about there. So 383 and 0.145. It's 55 and a half. Got the bias probe hooked up now. The reason I went ahead and hooked up the bias probe, I want to take the current measurement directly off the plate instead of measuring through that resistor. The resistor gets you close, but it's not going to get you extremely accurate. I want to bias this thing slightly on the cold side so that this doesn't happen again. I don't want these tubes coming back to me again. Dial it all the way up to 120. Okay, so we're at 120 volts on the input. Let's go ahead and recalculate our plate dissipation at this point. All right, 0.0402 times 444 is 17.84. Probably a bit on the low side, I would say, but so, you know, 18 watts. I think I want to bring it up to about 21 watts, probably, for that. I mean, I say that, but at the same time, I kind of don't. You know, I don't want to bring it up. I kind of want to just leave it on the low side because, I mean, honestly, man, this thing is... I think what I might do is bring it up just a couple watts. It sure is screeching. Why is it screeching like that? Okay. That's odd. That's really odd right there. I don't like that. Is that just feedback? That's just feedback. So that's not even the... Okay, so I don't even have anything in the input. There we go. Okay. 628 and 423. .0628 times 423. I mean, see, that's 26. That's 26.56 watts right there. It's capable of 35 watts at the top end. And that, you know, so that's still well below. And that was kind of cranked. You know, this is something I generally don't do. But on this one, I kind of want to. I want to see what the... 123 and 376. Man, it's going to be massive. So 0.123 times 376. That's 46 watts per tube. I mean, you know, so if you crank this thing, you're really driving those tubes too much. I want to dial it up just a little bit so you can see what's going on here. So we've got... Okay, if you push this into square wave territory, 120 milliamps, 383. Okay, right there. That's maximum before distortion right there. Okay, so that's about as far as you'd want to push it, probably. 88 and 402. So if we look at those numbers, 0.088 times 402 is 35 watts. That's maximum dissipation at that level, and you can actually crank it beyond that. And that's the problem I have with it. I don't want this dude to be able to crank it beyond what these tubes are gonna handle at their max. I think I am going to dial this down cold, and it just has to be done, man. If you don't, you're just asking for trouble. I think with these tubes are just not going to handle it. Okay, that right there is that's as low as my dial will go without modifying the amp again. 108 and 387. Yeah, see, man, that's 41 and a half watts. So I mean, even there, I mean, typically when you bias stuff, you know, you bias it according to what it is setting at idle. In this case, see right there, 36.4 milliamps of current. You know, it's 0.0364 times plate voltage 448. You know, it's 16 and a half watts sitting at idle per tube, which is low. But then when you start cranking it, when you start cranking the amp, you know, I mean, and I have the output matched. It's set at 16 ohms, and I've got it set at 16 ohms on my dummy load. Yep, so that's matched properly, so that's not an issue. Yeah, dude, it's just, I'm gonna have to warn him on this. It just, don't crank this output a whole lot, man, because I just don't think these tubes will take it. I don't know what their deal is. I mean, right now, if you do crank it into square wave territory, I mean, these would not last long like that. 122, 377. Let's just say the average there was probably about 118.118. And what I say, 387 times 387. Yeah, man, 45 watts. You would cremate the tubes. Maybe take a second look at this circuit again. See if there's anything that has been modified that might be causing this thing to do what it's doing. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to do other than maybe change the grid load resistors on the output from 100. I think they're at 150K now. I could change those maybe down to like 82K, something like that. That's pretty common to do that. I think it's those. Is it those right there? I think it's those two resistors right there. Those 1, 5. Yeah, with the 4, with the yellow. With the 4 zeros. So that's 1, 5, and 4 0. That's 150K, and I think there's an 82K written on the board under those two. Some Marshalls had those at 82K, and like I said, it's written on the board at 82K. They're a different type of resistor than all the other ones in this amp. So that might be something I do here, possibly. That, and we might also change the range of this bias while I'm in here too. I don't know if that's stock or not. I'm not sure. Like I said, those resistors are different than everything else in it. Let me think about this. I might do something of that nature, but I mean, like I said, man, right now at idle, this thing is idling way under what I normally would set something at. So what I'm doing is I'm dialing it up as far as it will go without going into distortion. So if it goes into like blocking like that, you see how the wave is squaring off at the bottom right there. If I just stop at the maximum clean wave, here are my numbers, 937 and 394. So 0.0937 times 394 volts, 37 watts. Still too much, isn't it? Yeah, it's just too much. Okay, so I changed those two resistors from 150 ohms to 150K to 82K. And again, those are the resistors that are feeding the bias into the grids on the output tubes. It's these resistors here, this one and this one. You see the bias originates down here, flows up to here through these resistors, one to this pair, and then the other feeds this pair. So by chopping that value in half, I will effectively increase the negative bias. I'm not going to strap the board back down yet completely. I'm just going to let it rest here for a second while we take some more measurements, but I do have to hook this back up. This isn't going to be a perfect test because I'm only going to put like a 1K sine wave into this thing. Probably if I wanted to test this a little bit better, more thoroughly, I would make it sweep through the frequencies and do some tests that way as it sweeps, and then find the peak at the top of the dial, because I don't want this thing coming back again. If I'm going to own the issue, it's going to have to fail some other way. Okay, we got it on 10 times. We will also be able to measure the overall wattage at the output of this amp too. Okay, the first two stages are cranked, but the second it squares off right there at the bottom, you can see this little notch right here that squares off at the bottom of that wave. Boom, right there. That's about the maximum what I want. That's okay. So that's a 0.90 and 386 equals 34.7. 34.7. Okay. See, I mean, I just have to tell him, look, don't go above about 7 on the master volume. I mean, you're pushing because at that point you're pushing the tubes completely to their max. Okay, so if we look at the wave there, the sine wave, I'm going to dial each of these stages so that just right before distortion, so right there. And then we'll dial this one to just before distortion as well, which is right about there. And we have 2 volts per division here, so that's 2, 4, yeah, right? 2, 4, 6 on the low side. I think we got the position a little bit off. Hang on. I think our position's a little bit off. Yeah, right about there. Let's try that again. So right about there is before distortion. So we've got 2, 4, and a little bit. 2, 4. So the bottom of our wave is actually bigger than the top of our wave. I'm going to compromise on that and say 2, 4, and a little bit. So let's just say 45. 4.5 times 10. So that's 45 because we've got a times 10 here on our probe. We've got to do that. So yeah, our calculation for the overall power and that's conservative. That's taking it easy on this amp, man. You know, I think it's wise to do that, especially just given the bad luck we've had with these tubes, to just take it easy with them. And see, these really need to be burned in at this for just a little bit. So we're at 103, so 0.103, right? Times 382. 382. That's 39 watts right there. Okay, so that'll do it for this video. You know, I don't know on this one. I'm kind of 2 minds. This is the first time I've had to bias anything like this to keep it from overheating in the way that this one has done. The tubes just couldn't take it. You know, I guess he was probably jamming balls out, you know, and had it cranked and probably was sounding pretty good, but just killed a couple of the tubes. I think that they should be fine now. I have cooled it off quite a bit. It's not as cool as I could probably make it if I wanted to go in and modify the bias a little bit more, but you know, it's as cool as I'm willing to take it right now. I just, you know, I think if you cool it off anymore, it's just gonna start to turn a bit anemic, and I don't want that. But I want to find a happy balance so that this thing, when cranked, is not going to exceed the maximum plate dissipation of the 6550s. You know, most tubes should be able, because guitar is not going to be like, you know, like one solid note. It's not going to be like, you know, putting a sine wave through the amp. You know, when you play guitar, you're hitting notes, and the notes rise and they kind of fall. So the tubes, they have a time to cool off, you know, in between notes. It's not like you're just, you know, the whole time. Now, maybe some people are, and they should probably watch the bias, but 0.0984 times 385 volts is 38 watts. So it's just above the max. You know, and again, with a guitar, it's not going to be one note the whole time. You're not going to be driving the output the entire time. You're going to be hitting notes, and the note's going to go up and then it's going to fall. So it's a little bit different when you've got a guitar. So, you know, I think we'll be okay at this. I think, you know, I don't even know. I don't even know anymore. But I'm hoping that it should be fine. Just a weird experience I've had with these tubes. But I do think that lowering the value of that the grid leak resistors to an 82K instead of 150K should help get a little bit more negative bias to the tubes. Yeah, it can't. I don't think it can hurt. It's pretty late at night now. I think I'm going to wait till the morning. The customer should be by sometime tomorrow, probably tomorrow afternoon or something, to pick it up. So I'm hoping I will have some time tomorrow morning to hook this thing up to the cabinet and just kind of put it through its paces, make sure it's sounding good, in addition to looking good on the scope and everything. I mean, it's got a good looking wave to it. Anyway, so that'll do it. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know it's been a long one. It's been kind of a headachy one for me. And for now, we will see y'all later.